well, to talk more a bit about the long road of rehabilitation ahead for the freed hostages, we're joined by Dr. Kamila Fokosh-Lavan. She's a practicing psychologist and a business consultant as well. Thank you very much for being with us this morning, Dr. Lavan. First of all, I mean, what will be the first step for people treating these freed hostages? I mean, they go from the absolute worst situation possible, being held in danger, surrounded by danger, cut off from their loved ones, to going almost overnight to being surrounded by people who love them, who want to know what happened to them, you know, being able to sleep in their own bed. I mean, how can a human being cope with that change like that?
Beautiful question, and as kind of piggyback on what Rob just said and what the Ministry of Health was asking for, it is very, very important. This individualized treatment is key. Yes, sure, there are some things that are overlapping, obviously, but again, to be able, one of the overlaps is this individuation, if you will. Yes, because as you're saying, the track from where they were held, who were they held by? Some were held and being basically made to be slaves. Others, you know, cleaning, cooking, and whatever else they were doing over there. Mistreatment, as we already know, the food was scarce as well. A lot of different kinds of mistreatment that we will not go into right now. Some were also isolated. So we know that the treatments were very different for each one of them. The fear that was there, the sense of inability to control the situation, or if you're even going to get out. And all of a sudden, as you're saying, like from this darkness, you're into the light. It's very difficult, even physically, as you know, for the eyes to adjust. So we do have to be very, very sensitive as a whole community, all of us, and also especially the people that are closer to them, to allow for this step-by-step process. Whether it is, you know, sometimes they might just want to have fun and not think of anything else. Sometimes they might want to have some privacy and go cry it out. Also, as we see them, so slowly we will start seeing them also outside in the real world, I don't know, grabbing a cup of coffee. It will be very good for the public not to crowd them and allow them for that, not necessarily being always recognized kind of moment, right? So kind of unspoken code to allow them for that privacy, to allow them for that normalcy.
And another thing, I mean, we've heard people talk about survivor's guilt, especially some of the people who survived the massacre at the Nova Festival. You know, why did I survive and someone else was murdered, my friend or whoever? Is there a similar thing with the hostages? You know, why have I been freed and yet others are still being held? And how do you overcome that?
Yes, very much. So we definitely need to watch for that, because often with that guilt sometimes could be so overwhelming. Suicidality comes with it, which we don't want, obviously, but we need to watch for it. It's very important. Like, no one wants to talk about it, and people are often very confused on what to do with it to begin with. So not talking about it is the opposite of what we want to do. We do want to be aware, especially within the medical community, which I'm sure everyone is, but also to be able to discuss it with family members and to normalize it, meaning that they are not afraid of the idea, so that they can help, so that the hostages that are released themselves are able to recognize the feelings sometimes and why those feelings will come up, and to understand if they come up, right? Different kinds of degrees of these feelings, and to understand that those feelings are basically not the true self. Yes, it is the trauma speaking, it is the confusion speaking, it is the storm of pain and fear that they were living in that is still continuing, to kind of be able to look at it from the side and to understand that these feelings, while they're very real and they actually are there, are also not necessarily a representation of what they actually want past the pain, right? So to be able to hold, in a way, two realities at the same time, to be slowly able to recover and go forward, and not to succumb to these emotions and feelings that sometimes are very dangerous.
And we're getting bits and pieces of information about how each hostage was held and the suffering that they had to go through. For example, Gadi Moses, you know, an 81-year-old man, he said he was held alone almost the whole time, as was Arbel Yahud, a young woman in her 20s. I mean, even the most brutal murderers are not subjected to that kind of punishment, being held in solitary confinement for a year and a half. I mean, how do you explain, how does the human mind begin to cope with that extreme level of social deprivation?
Very beautiful question. And yes, this is usually used as one of the more extreme kind of punishments for something very, very serious, or for when there's torture inflicted on purpose to break an individual to get information and whatnot. Yes, that also within the international community, there is some kind of a law that says that certain things we are not, even though we know how to do this, we should not. Yes, so this is one of those examples where we should not accept. Clearly, it's been happening, and this isn't also. These are civilians, and even if they weren't, like, what are you doing? Yeah. So putting that aside, which a lot of things could be said, which I'm not going to right now. Anyway, and answering your question is that the mind, it is amazing how resilient we actually are as a person, as a human being. Our mind will slowly start to create different patterns of trying to kind of escape the situation and the reality. Often this idea of dissociation is being used as a more of a negative context, which I think is partially not understanding the fuller picture or just not getting into it. But it's actually a protective factor where it allows the person to now fantasize or go into different places to basically as a protective factor.
Your mind will literally
to have reprieve.
Take you to another place. It's astonishing. The resilience of these hostages just amazes me each and every time I read about it. Dr. Kamila Fokos-Levan, we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.